As many of you have heard, New York State has decided to issue driver's licenses to illegal aliens who are here in this country illegally. And you know what that's going to entitle them to. All kinds of benefits, as well as being able to vote. And they're here illegally. So the Democratic liberals have taken upon themselves to make sure that all illegals who are here in this country illegally can now obtain driver's licenses. Just like California has done. Now New York is doing it. But if you think it's just California and New York and you haven't been up on everything in the last few years, I made a video several years ago on another channel that I used to have exposing what the DMV, the Division of Motor Vehicles Bureaus in the Midwest, have been doing. I want you to watch this video. I want to get right to it because it's very important. At the end of the video, I'm going to give my commentary on what I think of this bullshit. So let's have a look at what's going on and what's been going on around the country the last 5 to 7 years under Obama and the Democrats. Because this is something many of you do not know. Pass this video on to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers, your family members. Let them see this video. Because I'm telling you right now, a lot of you don't know what's been going on, and I've been keeping up on it. Let's get to the video and wait for the commentary at the end of the video. Thank you.
New York State recently passing a law allowing illegal immigrants access to a driver's license, but one county clerk, at least one, not happy about this. Come in, Frank Marola, Rensselaer County Clerk. Frank, you're suing the state, right?
We are. We're going to process a lawsuit.
Haven't done it yet.
Haven't done it yet. Well, we're going to do it federally this time. In 2007, I happened to be there when Spitzer tried to do it, and we filed a lawsuit at that time. This time it's a little different. He did it in an executive order. This time the Assembly and the Senate passed it. The governor signed it right away. So we're going to do it on the federal level. People ask me all the time, why is it different in New York State versus other states? And it's a simple reason. County clerks process transactions in New York State versus other states where the state employees all do it. So when they do something, you got 52 county clerks, all separately elected officials that do DMV business. And we also support the Constitution.
What is your biggest fear with regard to giving a driver's license to illegals?
Well, it's not just the fear. It's the idea that someone's here illegally and we're going to give them a license to drive that's going to look exactly like the license that you hold today.
Well, I happen to have in my hands an enhanced New York license. This is something that I had to get recently. It does allow me to get on planes without using a passport or anything. It also allows me to get on military bases, which is good for me. But I knew when I saw this enhanced license coming that they were going to plan something like that.
Yeah, Real ID law was passed over 10 years ago, and this governor waited right to the end to sign on. So now we only got a little over a year left before any license that if you want to fly domestically, it's either got to be a Real ID license or an enhanced. But every other license will say not for federal purposes. And if you're here illegally, the license they want to give them will look just like someone licensed that says not for federal purposes.
Are you afraid that somehow these illegals would be able to use it to vote?
I said in 2007, I say it again, it's really not about driving. If they wanted to give them a license that looked a little different than your license and my license, they could do that. They wanted to give them a license identical to the license that everyone holds to register to vote, and that's exactly what they're looking at.
Their claim is that it makes people safer because this way illegals who are driving will actually have to prove that they can drive well in order to get a license, so it might improve safety on the roads. You're smiling. I don't think you buy that.
That's just a big joke, I think. It's nothing about the safety part of it. It's about getting people, getting into the polls, and that's what they're looking to do. It has nothing to do with driving at all.
Well, Frank Marola, we appreciate you coming down. It took you 2.5 hours to get here to make this interview. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Keep us informed about what happens.
I will do.
Appreciate it.
Now, here is my video that I made back in 2015, I think it was, showing the Division of Motor Vehicles, people working inside committing fraud and extortion into the millions of dollars as they charge illegal aliens in this country illegally as much as $2,500 to $4,500 to obtain a driver's license in Missouri and Kansas City specifically, and St. Joseph, Missouri, for their licenses. And they raided those offices and arrested those people. Here's that video. Watch it.
Breaking news for April 21st, 2015. Liberals caught selling out America again as usual, giving illegals driver's licenses. Now, I don't know what it is you liberals don't get about illegals. Is this how you're going to push your agenda? By stealing people's social security numbers and their personal information and then giving it to illegals for them to obtain an illegal driver's license?
Kansas DMV employee busted, accused of taking bribes to give out fraudulent driver's licenses.
The Kansas Department of Revenue has arrested 9 people who they say are part of this scam, and they aren't done yet. New at 6, KCTV5's Janine Kiesling is live with those details. Janine?
Carolyn, the DMV employee worked out of this driver's license bureau in Mission, Kansas. She and at least 2 others are suspected of running this scam, and those involved are facing dozens of charges, including bribery. One by one, defendant after defendant, they were marched in front of a judge today, each accused in a scam that goes all the way to the state. A spokesperson for the Kansas Department of Revenue tells KCTV5 Samantha Moore worked at the DMV in Mission, and it's believed since at least 2012 she's been accepting bribes to give undocumented workers Kansas driver's licenses. It would cost the undocumented workers $2,500 for each license. They would receive the bogus paperwork and then go into the DMV, and Moore would reportedly process the paperwork as if it were valid.
The bribery charges?
Victor Jimenez Flores is also charged in connection to the case, but posted bond this morning.
Are you Victor? You're not aware that you were booked into jail this morning?
He wouldn't talk about the charges he's facing. Neighbors tell us more than a half a dozen agents showed up at Flores's Overland Park home last night and took him into custody. Meanwhile, similar arrests were being made around the metro. And according to the KDOR, they aren't done. Moore has been under surveillance for the past several months, but the charges date back years. Shaylin Celadon and Luis Contreras were both called ringleaders in court. Attorney James Brunn argued to have Contreras' bond reduced from the current $250,000, but prosecutors argued against because of the sheer volume of felonies the accused are facing.
It's unacceptable.
Stan Severance heard of the news today while going to the DMV himself and hopes if the allegations are true, authorities don't stop pressing until everyone involved is held accountable.
It's corruption. You can't have it.
We've just learned another suspect has arrested, bringing the total number of defendants to 10. The Johnson County District Attorney did not want to talk about the case, but says he will in the coming days. We're live in Mission. Janine Kiesling, KCTV5 News.
First, you're looking at a Kansas DMV worker and more than half a dozen people facing charges in a major bribery case.
Yeah, officials believe most of the illegal activity took place at the DMV in Merriam, and that's where we find 41 Action News reporter Andres Gutierrez this morning. And Andres, how long has this bribery scheme been going on?
It could be as long as 3 years, Patrick. Johnson County prosecutors say that one of the employees here, 28-year-old Samantha Moore, is accused of taking bribes to get people fraudulent licenses. She's one of 9 people arrested in connection with this case. In court yesterday, prosecutors told the judge Moore ran the scheme with 2 other people. Moore is accused of using other people's social security numbers and issuing fake licenses to more than a handful of people. Law enforcement experts say what potentially happened here is alarming.
It matters in the sense that we don't want our public officials, being DMV employees, subject and open to being bribed. The fact that we have state officials or any government officials who are willingly corrupted is very scary to us, in our society.
Now, the Kansas Department of Revenue, who handles driver's license, say the investigation here isn't over. 8 out of the 9 suspects will be in court next Thursday. Reporting live in Merriam this morning, Andres Gutierrez, 41 Action News.
And here's that news report out of St. Joseph, Missouri from 2012-2013 about the Division of Motor Vehicles Bureau up in St. Joseph, Missouri, doing the same thing. Those working inside the Division of Motor Vehicles were selling illegals driver's licenses for huge bucks. $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 so they could obtain a driver's license illegally. And here is that report now.
Court documents unsealed today put a St. Joseph family at the center of a multi-million-dollar identity theft scheme to give fake IDs to illegal immigrants. KMBC9's Martin Augustine is live at the U.S. Courthouse in downtown Kansas City. Martin?
Laura, the U.S. Attorney for Western Missouri, Beth Phillips, says that 6 members of that St. Joseph family are joined by 8 others who live in Carthage, Missouri, Chicago, and Texas, who for 2 years now have been buying and selling birth certificates and other forms of ID to illegal immigrants so that they can come to Missouri and get a driver's license. Now, the scheme is all centered in St. Joseph, where most of the illegal immigrants went to get their driver's license, and they'd use that ID then to go across the country to find work. The St. Joseph family played a number of roles in all this. We'll get to that in more detail in just a moment, but one of their jobs was to serve as translators for the illegal immigrants as they went to the driver's license office. The investigation shows that in the neighborhood of 3,500 licenses were issued over the last 2 years, a scheme that brought in $5 million for the 14 people indicted, including that family in St. Joseph, who did more than act as translators.
They would assist the illegal aliens to memorize the information contained in the documents, sometimes practice the signature of the individual whose name was on the Social Security card, and actually go to the license office with the illegal alien to assist them to obtain the fraudulent identification documents.
That St. Joseph family ranges in age from 46 to 21. They've already made their court appearances here at the U.S. Courthouse and been allowed to go back home. The way the indictment spells this out, generally how this all worked, is that a couple of other conspirators named in this indictment worked down in Texas, and they would buy birth certificates and Social Security cards from people for sometimes for less than $500, then resell those documents to illegal immigrants for $1,500 to $1,600. Those illegal immigrants would then make their way up to St. Joseph, to a driver's license office there, get their driver's license, and go on from there. Now, why St. Joseph is at the center of this, why that St. Joseph driver's license office became ground zero for all of this, we don't know. It's not specified in the indictment, and U.S. Attorney Beth Phillips would not comment. Reporting live, Martin Augustine, KMBC 9 News.
Martin, thank you. The 14 people indicted face penalties anywhere from 5 to 45 years in prison.
In the following video clips you're about to see are from a video on one of my other previous channels that I used to have. Some of you may not be aware of this, and you need to pay attention to it. So please watch the following video clips that accompany this video so you have a full understanding of exactly what is going on. And this has been going on for quite some time, the last 7 to 10 years. Let's have a look at the next round of clips.
They have drawn lines, and our prisoners in California are being beat and harassed and raped by Hispanic gang members who recently arrived here because of the numbers. My answer to you, sir, would be we don't need any new laws. Enforce the ones we got.
And to Texas now, where we're learning exclusively about a new health threat coming from illegal border crossers. The Border Patrol now worried about a virus outbreak.
And ABC 15's Savita Fergani is taking action to get that story in Texas.
They're seeing crossers with contagious infections, and sources tell me right now, all that's separating the sick from the healthy, this caution tape, and agents tell me that's not enough.
We're sending people everywhere, and the average person, the average citizen doesn't realize what's going on down here.
Agent Chris Cabrera's concerns go way past the hundreds of women and children that cross the Rio Grande River every day in southern Texas.
We're having an outbreak of scabies that it's been going on for a month or so now.
The illegals will come across, they'll jump that fence.
Texas border resident Jorge Garcia says word about the contagious skin infection is getting around.
Our Border Patrol comes and checks with us almost on a daily basis here, and they told us about an outbreak of scabies here at the McAllen station.
And that's not all.
We're starting to see chicken pox, we're starting to see staph infections, we're starting to see different viruses.
Garcia believes the viruses are not confined to the detention center. Not long ago, a group of border crossers came knocking on his door.
It was a 7-month-old baby. The baby was shaking and cold. They had a high fever.
We're told the Department of Homeland Security called in the Coast Guard medics. This trailer is just one of many used to treat the sick.
They're all contagious. So now we're transporting people to different parts of the state, different parts of the country, and some of these viruses are asymptomatic at this point. They're not showing the symptoms.
Just the fact that we're exposed to it, and so is everybody else here in South Texas, is a great concern to us.
And thousands of those immigrants that were detained, then released, are now spread all over the United States, including Arizona. It's unclear how many were treated for illness. And as of right now, DHS has denied every request I've made to speak to medical staff and take tours of the 3 facilities right here in Texas that are providing treatment. In McAllen, Texas, Levita Fergani, ABC 15 News.
On the ground, the agents are frustrated. Morale is low. They don't like to see their work. You know, when they've apprehended these people, they don't like to see them just released into our society. They want them deported as much as you and I.
All these Border Patrol agents we know are dedicated, patriotic people. We depend on them to be able to live here. I mean, if we didn't have the Border Patrol here, we probably wouldn't be here. I mean, we absolutely depend on them for our safety here. Equip them with the proper equipment that they need, night vision equipment, the latest night vision equipment, more boots on the ground. You know, we probably wouldn't be dealing with what we're dealing with right now, but that's not the case. You know, that's not happening.
They had asked years ago for more help, and instead they were cut. And now all of a sudden the government's finding all this money to house these illegals and feed them and cater them when this could have been avoided.
The criminal element is still coming through, and there's a substantial amount of that traffic slipping through here, and we're experiencing it every day. We've had a lot of traffic this week. There's been a number of encounters with these guys. There's imminent danger out here. These people have criminal intent. It would be nothing for us to be killed and the house ransacked and vehicles stolen.
But there's only one way for this criminal element, the gang members, the young men that have been deported multi times, and this is their only route through. And this is what I'm seeing is all young males. I would say the last 50 or 60 illegal immigrants that I've seen out here have been 90%, 95% male.
A lot of these teenage boys coming from El Salvador and Guatemala, to be able to survive in Guatemala City, Guatemala, you know, by the time they're 13 years old, if they're not a gang member, they don't live. And that's what we're experiencing here. And
they've murdered somebody.
Yeah, well, they've murdered somebody, or they had to be a gang member to be able to survive. We know for a fact that these gang members that are coyotes that lead the humans through here are ruthless and heartless. And if somebody gets cramped up, they walk off and leave them. They don't call 911 to give a location where this person is. They tell them they're going to die. Sometimes they abuse them, beat them up a little bit, slap them around, and then leave them. And that's usually where they die.
What advice would you give people visiting this area of Texas?
Well, everybody just knows that, you know, you need to be very vigilant. You don't want to let any of these people get too close to you. You want to keep a distance. You want to keep a cell phone with you. And a lot of this country doesn't have cell phone service, but you definitely need to be armed. And your Second Amendment rights are very, very crucial to be able to live here. It's way past time to stand up and secure the border. No question there's a huge criminal element coming in here going to every city in the United States, even Washington, D.C. People from terrorist countries, countries that are deemed special interest countries, pouring in here undetected. It's time to step up and shut the border down. We can shut the border down in Afghanistan or Iraq. That's a big priority. Our biggest priority needs to be shut down this southwestern border.
This has made an awareness to the rest of the country, because now the rest of the country is getting these people shipped to their backyards. And, you know, we've always said what's coming through our backyard is heading to their backyard.
Special thanks to the men and women of Border Patrol, the men and women of ICE for doing an exceptionally difficult and exceptionally important job at a time that is particularly challenging. And we are grateful for the men and women of law enforcement and the work you do every day to keep us safe. Chief Provost, can you give us the most up-to-date statistics on how many people are crossing the border illegally and what the trend has been that you've been seeing?
Certainly, Senator. Overall, fiscal year to date, 460,294. That's Border Patrol Southwest border apprehensions. Just in the month of April, For Border Patrol, Southwest Border, 98,977. And the trend, it is increasing day by day. We had a group just last week of over 50, or a day where we apprehended over 5,200 people. We are seeing groups in this, we've actually apprehended 148 large groups of individuals. Compare that to 13 last fiscal year and 2 the fiscal year before that. And when I say a large group, that's 100 or more people in one group, 148 of those groups. As you know well, the demographic is changing as well. We have apprehended over 165,000 individuals from Guatemala, 133,000 from Honduras, 42,000 from El Salvador. Currently, 80% of our apprehensions are other than Mexican nationals, which is a huge demographic shift from where we were just a few years ago. 74% are from the Northern Triangle. And in FY18, we apprehended individuals from over 140 different countries. And this fiscal year to date, we've already apprehended individuals from 127 different countries.
In your judgment, to what extent does catch and release contribute to this massive increase in illegal crossings?
It is a huge pull factor. In my opening statement, I said my biggest concern is that we will have to start releasing single adults if ICE cannot get enough bed space. What we have seen with family units, since we have had to release all family units, we have seen the numbers grow exponentially. I am highly concerned about what's happening with single adults. Those numbers are increasing dramatically. Well, over 167,000 single adults. Everybody's focused on the humanitarian crisis. We have a crisis here as well. Those individuals we have to maintain the ability to detain those individuals through their immigration hearings. And we need a way to safely and securely detain families together through the process as well.
In March, Commissioner McAleenan testified before this committee that Border Patrol had identified over 1,700 cases where children crossed the border with adults claiming to be a family unit, only for the Border Patrol to discover that the child and the adult were not related. Can you provide any update on those numbers?
Our fraud numbers are over 3,500 now, year to date, fiscal year to date. That includes individuals who are not related whatsoever. It also may include individuals who claim to be juveniles, but then we determine that they are actually adults themselves, as well as some that
you
may
have the breakdown of how many are fraudulent family units? And if not, if you could get the
3,500, over 3,500 so far.
So I've heard reports that the cartels are now engaged in the practice of renting children. To what extent has Border Patrol seen that occurring, and is it increasing?
We have seen cases happen. HSI is focused on this as well now and have task forces that are working with us. Just last week, actually an Office of Field Operations officer who was assisting Border Patrol agents identified a case just like that and worked hand in hand with HSI on that investigation where the child admitted to being basically sold by his mother.
Any other witnesses care to elaborate on
Yes,
this
Senator, if I
horrific
may.
practice?
My colleagues in HSI, to reiterate what the chief was talking about, as far as they are moving some of their resources to additional resources to the border, that being victims awareness specialists, special agents, and I think it was around April 15th up through May 3rd. In their conducting their interviews of families, they identified roughly 3 out of every 10 families to not be families. In other words, fraud being conducted. Also,
and let me ask you briefly, just because time is expiring, would you agree that congressional loopholes that make essentially a child a get-out-of-jail-free card
No question.
incentivize cartels abusing children and putting them in these circumstances?
Absolutely. It's alarming what we are, as we are turning resources to this problem, because first and foremost, the welfare of the children is the most important to all of us for our components. And to the chief's words, I'm really concerned once we start digging into this as to the level of exploitation, these children being recycled, fraudulent documents. Another problem, if I may, adults posing as children. We've had cases where individuals are saying they're 17, 16, we're putting them in HHS care, only to find out after further investigation they're as old as in their late 20s. I mean, the fraud, the exploitation is rampant, and it's not stopping.
Please keep this committee advised as those data and that evidence is developed, because I think this is an issue of particular concern to this committee.
Thank you.
There you have it. If that isn't enough to convince you what these Democratic, Communist, Marxist, Socialist, liberal terrorists are up to, and to think we've got Beto O'Rourke and Cory Booker going down to Mexico and campaigning to get them people to vote for them in another country besides the United States. Cory Booker, seen here, and Beto O'Rourke. That shows you where their priorities are at. It isn't with the people of the United States, the Americans in this country. It's with the foreigners. They're campaigning in foreign countries to get them to vote for them in the United States. Now what the fuck is wrong with that fucking picture? Huh? That shows you what Cory Booker and Beto O'Rourke are really up to. It's about votes. Because that's the only people they can get to vote for them. Because they're such worthless pieces of shit. Such worthless pieces of utter shit. Cory Booker and Beto O'Rourke. Jesus. There you have it. They're selling our information, stealing our social security numbers and private information, however they can get it, to give these illegals driver's licenses and special entitlements. Welfare at the taxpayer's expense. So every time you fill out a credit app or a job application, you don't know that the person on the other end who you've submitted that application to, whether it's online or in person, isn't secretly photocopying or Xeroxing off that information, gathering it and selling it to a third party without the company's knowledge. Think about that. Where else are they getting this information except from job applications online or from you filling out a job application or a credit report in person? Where else would they be getting that information? Somebody on the inside is gathering that information despite what they tell you, even though it's a big company. And the bigger the company, the more fraud and corruption you got involved. They don't shred it. It could end up in a dumpster, and they could have dumpster divers going out there gathering that information late at night, and I've seen it before. And then selling that information online to the highest bidder, and the next thing you know, you're a victim of identity theft. Just because they're a big company does not mean there aren't people working on the inside gathering that information and selling it without the company's knowledge. Think about that. And as you've seen in the previous video, they were paying $2,000 to $4,000 to obtain that illegal's driver's license. I thought these people were broke. If they're that broke and they're coming over here, where are they getting that kind of money to buy those illegal driver's licenses and buy those cars? They don't look broke to me. As a recent video showed that I come across, they're coming, even the ones that are coming from South Africa, they're coming with hundreds of dollars in their pocket, thousands of dollars wadded up in $100 bills in their pocket. Where are they getting it from? George Soros? Is he funding this? There's something going on, isn't there? They're not as broke and poor and destitute as what they want the liberal news media to think. Are you listening CNN and MSNBC and NPR and ABC News? You're the ones that report these fake news that you report on. There's something going on, isn't there? These people aren't broke. And I guarantee you the drug cartels are not giving them that kind of money. So they're getting it from somewhere, aren't they? To think they're purchasing those kind of driver's licenses with our stolen information, social security numbers, private information, and there's people working inside across the country at these Division of Motor Vehicle Bureaus selling them driver's licenses for $2,000, $3,000, and $4,000, as you've seen here in Kansas City, Missouri, in Johnson County, Kansas, which is over on the Kansas side, in St. Joseph, Missouri, and California, and now New York. It's happening in other states too. Just hasn't been reported on yet because they haven't investigated it. I guarantee it's happening. I think it's already happened in Tennessee and Kentucky as well. People of this country better wake up, and you better start guarding your private information a little bit more than what you've been. You already let Facebook invade your life, and there's another entity that I highly suspect is selling this information, as well as Twitter. Facebook and Twitter are probably responsible for a lot of this information being illegally sold to foreign entities. And to think these disgusting, pathetic, democratic liberals, these communists, socialists, Marxists, want open borders? And AOC wants to contend that those detention centers down there are like Nazi concentration camps? That sick, demented, young liberal skank, which is exactly what AOC is. She's a communist liberal skank. See my earlier video I just posted about who her chief of staff is. I'm exposing her chief of staff, AOC. Watch the previous video on my YouTube channel. People, it's time you wake up. Get away from your sports games, your communist NFL football games, and pay attention to what the Sam hell's going on. Yes, there is something you can do about it, but you got to get up off your lazy ass and quit being timid and passive and naive and letting these people get by with it. You've been asleep at the wheel too long. You've been too passive, too timid, and too naive. And it's time you wake up. I feel sorry for people that run around with their heads buried in the sand, or as I like to call it, with their heads planted so far up their ass they can't see straight. That's what many of you are doing. And you're not doing a damn thing about anything. But by God, you've got time to go to a sports game and pay for season tickets and wait in line for hours to get into this sports game so you can yell and act like a bunch of jackasses. But you won't do anything about this. The illegals coming across our border, invading your cities and your towns, killing people, like in Nevada, that illegal murdered 4 people. 4 elderly people, shot them to death in western Nevada of this year. We had an illegal drive a truck in Denver, lost his brakes, could not read a road sign, passed a runaway truck ramp, went into Denver, and took out 28 cars in his semi. 28 cars in his semi. You can find it on YouTube. And killed 4 or 5 people. We had another incident in New Hampshire, just the month of June, 2019. Another Ukrainian national, supposedly here in the United States, supposedly legally, but then ICE has a detainer on him, wiped out 10 Harley riders in New Hampshire, ran over them, killed 7 of them, put 3 in the hospital in New Hampshire. pulling another truck driver. Not a full-fledged truck driver, because he was driving a pickup truck pulling a trailer, not like he was driving a semi. Ran over 10 Harley riders, killed 7 of them, put 3 in the hospital. Turns out he had numerous DUI and DWI convictions and had been caught with a crack pipe in a previous arrest. A crack pipe. He's 23 years old. Both of these drivers were 23 years old. The one in Denver and the one in New Hampshire. And they want us to go get this ID, this real ID, so we can get on airplanes and fly legally and pay even more money to obtain our driver's licenses, while they let illegals come over across the border into this country and get all kinds of free entitlements, but they want us to buy into this real ID shit, or we won't be able to fly on commercial airplanes or allowed into government buildings like courthouses to get your who knows what. No, I'm not paying it. It's just like they want truck drivers to go get a hazmat and pay $130 and go get fingerprinted and mugshot, pay $130, run around 2 or 3 different places to do all this. Why they let illegals come over here and get driver's licenses for little or nothing? For those of you who don't know, they actually, to be a truck driver and have hazmat, they want a truck driver to run down and get fingerprinted at one location, go get mugshot at another location, and submit all kinds of personal information so they can do a background check on you, which takes 3 to 6 weeks, pay $130 after you've ran around to 2 or 3 different locations, and pay the $130. While they let illegal aliens come across this border under all kinds of false pretenses and give them all kinds of entitlements. And no, I won't do it. I'm not submitting to hazmat. They can kiss my ass. And that goes for all you trucking companies out there too. You're that stupid to play into it, and you're that naive. You should have stood up against this shit when you had the chance, but you didn't. You played right into it, like a bunch of naive zombie fools. And for the rest of you who are going to, and the rest of you senators and congressmen out there that are going to let this real ID bullshit on our driver's licenses go into pass, you ought to be fighting against it. You ought to be fighting against it because they're letting the illegal aliens come over here and get driver's licenses identical to ours, as you've seen in the previous video. But they want us to pay more money for this real ID so we can get on airplanes and go into government buildings, like that's really going to solve anything and make it more secure. Well, you know that's bullshit as well as the rest of us. Utter bullshit. I want to see some of you congressmen and senators out there and state representatives fighting against this real ID, because it's nothing but a money grab from the U.S. taxpayers to trump up the fees of the driver's licenses. You know it, I know it, and now we know it. And frankly, I'm about fed up with all this bullshit you're trying to lay on the American people. I'm not buying into it. I'm not going to submit to it, and I'm not going to be naive and ignorant enough to play into it. The rest of you son of bitches out there want to be naive, ignorant, and stupid and play into it, then go ahead. Play their game. See where it gets you. It's not going to get you anywhere. It's a money grab. It isn't going to make anything any safer. It's just like the CDL, when they said they came out with the CDL commercial driver's licenses in the 90s, how it'd make the roads safer. Well, it hasn't. They're more dangerous now than ever, because now they're letting all the illegals come over here and drive these semis that aren't even qualified. They can't even read the English language or know the English language. They can't even read road signs. How many times have we seen accidents out here with some foreign last name attached to it in one of these accidents? I'm telling you, you people better wake up in this country, whether you're a conservative or a Democrat. You better get your heads out of your damn asses real quick, because this is an invasion. An invasion. We are being invaded. We are at war. We are at war whether you choose to believe it or not. And the liberal news media is not going to come out and admit that. So y'all best wake up, because things are already out of hand. They're not getting out of hand. They're out of hand. They're way out of hand. And we've been sitting back letting it happen for too long.
Children to a story that was written long ago about a kingdom on a mountain and the valley folk below. On the mountain was a treasure buried deep beneath the stone, and the valley people swore they'd have it for their very own. Your neighbor, go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven. You can justify it in the end. Won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day, on the bloody morning after. One tin soldier rides away. Sent a message up the hill asking for the buried treasure, tons of gold for which they kill. Came an answer from the kingdom, with our brothers we will share all the secrets of a mountain, all the riches buried there. Go ahead and hate your neighbor, go ahead and cheat a friend. Do it in the name of heaven, justify it in the end. Won't be any trumpets blowing come the judgment day, on the bloody morning after. One tin soldier rides away. With anger, mount your horses, draw your swords, and they killed the mountain people, so they earned their just reward. Now they stood beside the treasure on the mountain dark and red, turned the stone and looked beneath it. Peace on earth was all it said.